Okay, welcome to 10 Mile Lake. It's Bobby Brown with All Star Bass Fishing, and I'm starting a new blog series that I'm going to let you guys in on, and it's going to be called Out of the Box versus Custom. So the idea behind this is we all as anglers know that we go through and modify things. We don't like to fish them out of the box necessarily the way that they are created. So I think it'll be interesting to get some viewer feedback, comments, and anyone who would like to be a part of this series, let me know if there are major modifications that you do to lures, what you do. And if you would like to be on the show, then I will bring you over and we'll start fishing. But today I'm out here at 10 Mile Lake, and one of the things that I like to do out here is throw a chatterbait. So for those of you that don't know what a chatterbait is, one of my favorites is the original ZMan chatterbait. Is vibrating jig. So basically it's a jig with a skirt, has a metal blade on it. So this will be the out of the box. What I like to do though is these things come with either no skirt or no trailer or a very small trailer out of the box. So what I like to do is, if it comes with a trailer, I throw the trailer out, and I actually use several different kinds of trailers. So the modifications that I do to this, and we all know that the vibrating jig market has exploded, and there's a lot of different modifications that people do with blades. There's a lot of custom work that's done out there, so another series may actually go into a little bit more detail of that. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use one of my favorite missile baits trailers on this. I'm going to give each bait the same amount of time on the same stretch of water. So the out of the box version is going to be first. I'm going to go ahead and open this up and just show you that I'm going to prove to you that this is, nothing's been done to this bait. Like I said, it's going to be the same type of bait. This is what it looks like. Give you a little bit of a close look here, what that chatterbait looks like. It's vibrating jig. If you haven't thrown one, definitely going to want to throw one. They are a good bait. My personal best out here at 10 Mile is 7.5, but that's actually after the modification. So I'm going to go ahead and see what we can do with this bait. I'm going to tie it on. I've got my Enigma Phenom series rod. I'm using 10-pound test braid, tying directly to that. You'll see a little bit of the way that this vibrates in the water, the stuff that I'm throwing it around. You know, you can fish these so many different ways. It's a really versatile bait. But let's see what it looks like right outside of the box. So like I said, the vibrating jig market has not been a secret for very long. It was a well-kept secret for a little while, but first time that I used one actually was here at 10 Mile. And I'd had a few different people tell me that they were a good bait. They didn't tell me exactly how they used it or what situations. I had to learn it on my own. It took me about 2 or 3 days to really kind of get to the point where I felt like I was using it in the right situations. They do get hung up on wood quite a bit if you don't use the weedless version of it. This one is not the weedless version of it. So if you throw it around wood too much, it is snaggy, but they make one that has a weed guard on it. Makes it a little bit easier to throw it in those situations. But mostly right now I'm going to be throwing it around lily pads here at 10 Mile in June, and the spawn has pretty much already been done. There's a few late spawners that are out there, but for the most part getting fish that are post-spawn recovered already and are starting to feed again. So some of them are actually protecting the fry. I know there's a lot of perch and bluegill that are popping the surface in this area in the evening. We'll see what we can do with this and record basically the difference in quantity of fish and weight of fish. So does it make a difference throwing it outside of the box? Do you get the same size of fish when you add a custom trailer to it? So let's go ahead and give it a try. I'll try to keep this in the view. This is my first pilot, so we'll see how this works. But any suggestions that we've got as I start doing this, throw them out there. So you can see right now I'm going to go ahead and go through this and try to retrieve it fairly quickly along these pads. There's pretty good gaps in these. These are not overgrown to the point where I can't get this through it. So I'm throwing it right to the edge, and I'll do this at the same thing with the other version of it. But great thing about a chatterbait is you can throw this and you can actually let it drop just basically like a jig. If you're not in a heavy wooded situation, you can let it drop and you can pick it up, and you'll see the rod tip start to bend back and forth, vibrate a little bit. That's the blade on there starting to act. So You know that if you throw this out there and you pick it up and that blade's not moving, one of two things: either you're in some weeds or there's a fish that's got it. So typically these things, they hit it pretty hard, so you know that there's a fish there. You know, there are times if the bite is a little bit slower, they may pick it up and just swim off with it, but for the most part, when I've been fishing these, they run and attack it. They think that it's a bait fish that's basically trying to leave the area, and that vibration that it sends off is something that they can key in on from quite a distance. So a lot of times they're actually running at this bait and hitting it on the run, so it's a pretty aggressive strike. Similar to a crankbait in a lot of ways. You're going to kind of notice that you can fish it in some of the same things, but a crankbait's going to get obviously hung up in a lot of these pads, whereas chatterbait, vibrating jig, is, you know, I can throw it out here in some of these and I can work it through these. You're going to get hung up in these pads every once in a while a little bit, but for the most part you can pretty much reel it right in through them, especially right now as sparse as they are. They're not choked out to the point where I have to worry too much about getting it hung up. I can let it drop in some of these and then rip it out. That's another good technique. If you're ripping it out of the pads, sometimes fish will go and they'll grab it basically just because it's another thing that triggers them. So like I said, we'll give this a little while, and I'm trying to pay attention to depth so that I can really repeat the same process over again once I add the trailer. I don't want to give it too much of a unfair advantage if I'm fishing it differently the second time through, but for the most part, first time through with one of these, you're going to pick up a lot of those aggressive fish anyway. So we'll see whether or not that proves to be the case. One thing that I'm noticing already is that without the trailer on this, it does have a little bit of a different vibration. You know, when I'm throwing it with a trailer, which I already know, you know, there's just a little more bulk to it. So this is a little bit lighter weight without that trailer on there. But color pattern, everything else is pretty much the same. Now, this may be an interesting concept to do on the river after we've gone through and done it on a lake like Tenmile. So for largemouth, what we're actually doing here may prove a little bit differently if you throw a chatterbait for smallmouth. So the added bulk, obviously for largemouth, is something that you want. That isn't always the case with smallmouth, but that'll be a different episode. So I will tell you that right now I'm fishing it fairly shallow, just looking for some of those fish that may be able to aggressively come up and feed on this. The way that I caught my 7-pounder on this was throwing it out to the end of trees, out in a little bit deeper water, letting it set, and then reeling it really slow along bottom right through those trees, just trying not to get hung up. And when I did that, thought I got hung up at first, and then realized that thing just started swimming off like it was a little mini torpedo, and ran away with it. So came up and jumped a couple times. It was a long cast, but it was just a real slow retrieve along bottom, and that fish came up and choked it. So again, that was actually with that missile bait trailer on it. So go ahead and I'll work this area quite a ways up here. Try to work it through pretty much to the point that we see ahead of us. You know, this is a location that there's a good weed line. There's pads, there's wood, there's a drop off. So these fish, once they've come up and spawned, they don't have to go out very far to recover. So there's a lot of fish that will just stay in areas like this. Not to mention just some of the smaller males that'll be cruising through here anyways, because there's a pretty good perch population just in the main body of the lake. And bluegill. Bluegill that seems like they've made a pretty good comeback this year. I've seen a fair amount of bluegill at the dock, which is good to see. So start thinking about color patterns and things like that. The bluegill are back, then you start using a little bit different colors than the typical perch pattern. Now I see there's several down logs here, so you know, I first went through the lily pad kind of pattern and didn't get anything through those. I'm gonna go ahead and fish some of these logs out here. They've got a little bit of of branches that are sticking off, but not really enough to be too concerned with getting snagged up. Just kind of have to, and you can watch these baits. You can really walk them through areas if you've got good enough visibility. Right now, the visibility in here is probably, oh, there's a little guy chasing it. Visibility, now that's interesting. There was a little one chased it, but it didn't come and eat it. You know, and it was big enough it could have ate it. But those little ones, let's see if I come back to this area with that trailer on there, see if it'll actually feed on it. But like I was saying, you can walk these baits right through a lot of the pads, a lot of the trees, if you've got good enough visibility. Visibility at Tenmile right now in June, water level's dropping a little bit. The lake is starting to get a little bit of that algae bloom. Some of the lake is starting to get that grainy kind of look to it, so water clarity isn't really good, but good enough to be able to see a bait, you know, 2-3 feet down into the water and see if there's any shadows following it. Like I said, you notice I'm retrieving this fairly fast, and you can see the rod tip vibrating. That's really just the way I like to throw it to cover water. May have to do this a little bit slower if I'm not triggering the strikes. These fish may not necessarily be quite as aggressive enough. They may just want something a little bit slower and down there off the bottom to come up and actually eat it. One of the interesting things though is as you start adding more and more volume, you can use so many different kinds of trailers on these. You get to the point where you can almost throw it like a swim bait, or you can use a swim bait, small swim baits as trailers on it. I like using creature baits, but I know there's been actually a couple of times this year where I've thrown Kitech swim baits, or I've thrown actually a pretty good size, you know, for these anyways. They don't have a huge hook on them, but I've thrown a 6 to 8 inch soft plastic swim bait on there and thrown it as a trailer as well. So you can experiment around with different trailers. That's part of the cool thing about the customization of these. So again, I'm fishing a mixture of wood and pads. At some points I'm getting this thing, you know, right over the top of a log, just trying to reel it over the log and give it enough of a hesitation or enough of a speed up, different that reeling pattern to really just kick that vibration in and get those fish triggered. So it's a reaction type of a bait. You know, I'm wanting to be able to get those fish to respond to it, come up and just eat. I don't want them looking at it very long. They look at this thing too long and they're going to start wondering what it is. So I just want them to come up and crush it. Come up and eat it. The Tenmile's been a pretty good lake for me this year, you know, since I've pretty much been here full time for the past few months. I've used a variety of different techniques, different baits to really search the lake, fish different areas. Oh, there's one following it. Again, I got another follower, but he didn't, oh, now came up at the boat. I'm gonna drop it down. This is an interesting one though. It's probably a 2-pounder, but he came up right to the boat, but it didn't eat it. So again, it was off of a lay down log, and it was a good enough, oh, there he hit it. Good enough size of fish, they should just come up and just munch on this thing. Well, came up, so out of the box, 0 for 2. The fish has followed it twice now. Well, that was the same fish that followed it again, but I've had a couple of fish that have followed it anyways, but straight out of the box, they're just not wanting to go and crush it. So out here a little bit deeper, you know, I know that there's a weed line right out in front of me here. You know, you can pretty much cast it out, fish it like a jig if you want to. Set it on bottom, just lift it up, and you'll feel that vibration. Let it hit bottom again, lift it up. And sometimes that's actually a good way to trigger them. It's a little bit different than just fishing a regular jig, because as soon as you lift it up, you're going to start feeling that vibration, like I said, almost like a crankbait. Just a little bit of extra action on it, so you can really lift it up a few feet off of bottom and then let it back down, and just see if you get a strike triggered that way. pretty much done here. Let's go with 3 more casts. See if I can just get anything to come up here out of this wood. So that was cast number 1. The last cast sequence, you know, it's kind of like, all right, can't stand going through this area and not catching fish. So this is last cast number 2. Last cast number 3 is going to be this deeper log right here. Alright, so what did we prove? I don't know. Proved that right out of the box, this bait has really good action. It looks good. Now, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to grab a Missile Baits trailer. It's a green pumpkin, or that's actually watermelon red flake. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put this on here. So same chatterbait, and like I said, I like to put these on sideways. I'm going to show you here. I know I may have got myself out of the shot, but I'm going to go ahead and put this on sideways, kind of push it up there enough so that that tail flapping action actually ends up making it look a little bit more like a tail than legs. So here we go with the, hopefully I get that in the shot. So that's the ZMan chatterbait and adding a trailer. So let's fire this thing up, go over to the same location. Okay, so a couple of things here. So went through this area already once and had 0 success. Now I've got the same chatterbait, just adding a trailer to it. See what that does. Now, a couple of things. I know that I've already gone through this location and I had several followers. It's a little bit cheating because I already know where some of the fish are that I could potentially pick up with this. I'm guessing that they'll probably come up and they'll actually eat this one with the trailer, but we'll see. So, original chatterbait Elite, 5/0 Gamakatsu hook, out of the box, no fish. Several followers. Should have probably counted the followers, but I really expected there to be at least a quantity and a weight. So we'll see what we get this time, going through the same exact area and see what we can do. Like I said, this does have a little bit of a different vibration when you add a trailer to it. So it's going to feel a little bit different. It's going to feel a little bulkier. It's actually going to feel a little bit, this one, it's almost like it feels like a little bit less of a vibration until something hits it. Which, once it hits it, it actually will stop the vibration. There's another follower. Come off of that log with the weed line. Really just want one of these to crush it so I can prove my point. Pair of lay down logs right here. I know that there's fish around those, so find out. Get one right there. Got the sun just starting to go down behind the trees. You know, that typically ends up making some of those perch start hitting the water right about now. Saw quite a few of those last night. Hitting the top of the water in areas where there'd be probably, oh, there's one. All right, so that's what happens when you add the trailer. And not to let them touch the carpet, I don't want to get a penalty. But so, like I said, this is kind of what I expected, but I thought I'd get a few more of these to show it off. But so, adding the trailer to it, that fish just came up and it ate it pretty fast off of the wood there. Let it go back down and So you can see, pretty versatile bait. Now I'll spin it back around. I'll get that trailer situated again, and we'll see. So we've got 1-0 on the out of the box versus the custom one. Still got a little bit more of this cove to go. But typically this is kind of what you're doing is you find where some of these logs crisscross a little bit, and when you're reeling this across those, you know, those fish are just sitting down in there, and all it takes is for that last minute decision for them to just come up, and they're dedicated. Oh, there was another one. Usually they eat it. I don't typically miss this many fish on the chatterbait. Throw back in there and didn't want to have anything to do with it. I think it kind of felt that hook the first time. I think that was probably a smaller fish though too. Bigger fish, a lot of times you'll be able to stick your whole hand down in their mouth because they'll eat it so deep. That's usually when you know you've got the right trailer on there. Oh, maybe not. All right, not a giant. Oh, he came off anyway. But I had that was the 2-0 fish right there. He hit it hard, but he was just another pounder. But I called it. That was the fish that sealed it. I didn't get it in the boat, but I had 2 of them hooked up well enough to know that the chatterbait with the skirt, chatterbait with the trailer, in my opinion, wins. It was my opinion before I started, but I think I'm going to stick with it. I think when you throw it on there with the trailer, it just adds a little bit more to it that makes them come up and want to eat. So, like I said, the summary basically, chatterbait, it was the same one. They have all kinds of different colors, different sizes, different blades. They make a weedless version of it. You can add a trailer, you can fish it without a trailer. But it's a good all-around bait, something that I think if you haven't thrown one a lot, you should probably take a look at it and check it out. Again, I'm going to say thank you to Enigma Rods for the Phenom series. It's a good rod. This is a 7-foot medium heavy, so it's got enough backbone to be able to pull that. If you do get fish in the weeds, you can pull it straight out and you can kind of work these fish out so that they don't take you into the wood or the weeds and bury you into things. So good rod to match it up on, and I'm going to go and try to fish a few other areas, and maybe I'll post a few pictures if I'm able to get some more success. But for right now, I'm going to leave the trailer on it because that's the way I like to fish it. So thanks for tuning in. Let me know what you guys think. This is another modified version that I will probably switch to later on this evening, and just kind of keep some of that a secret. I don't want to show you everything, but thanks for tuning in, guys.